Hello, hope you enjoyed last week learning about David being chosen by God to be the next king because he had the right heart and loved and listened to God. This week we're going to see how his trust in God helped him to fight someone much bigger and stronger and older than himself and win because God was with him. But first, let's check out our seeds. So here we are looking at our seeds. The peas are doing really well, but we're going to have to split some of those up because they've become a little bit overcrowded. But I've bought, as you'll notice, something new. This is a strawberry plant, and so we're going to watch how strawberries grow from being small flowers into the red fruit that we all like. This week we see that David listens to God and amazes everyone when he kills the enemy called Goliath, who was a giant of 3 meters tall. Have a look at the giant in our garden and see how tall he was. Why not see if you can make your own giant from some items in the house, a cushion for the head, maybe some bin bags for the legs. Lie down next to it and take a photo of yourself and send it in to us. So the story is about David. Last week David was chosen to be the next king, but Saul was still the king and David was waiting, a bit like Prince Charles waiting to be the king. He was still at home minding the sheep and his brothers had gone to war with the king, but his dad said they might need a bit more food, take some bread and cheese and things for them. So he sets off. When he gets to the camp, everyone's afraid and running round and he doesn't know what's going on and they're pointing and talking. So he tries to find out what's going on from his elder brother, but Eliab isn't very nice and he says, you're just going to be showing off. Go home, go back to your sheep. We don't want little people like you here. But David goes off and he finds a bit more and he finds that they're frightened because they're not relying on God. So he goes up to Saul and he says, I'll kill that giant. I'll take God out onto the battlefield with me. And so out he goes. Saul tries to give him his armour, but it's far too big. So he goes out with just a sling and some pebbles. These are things that he'd use to ward off bears from his sheep. That means to frighten them away so that they didn't kill his sheep. And so out into the middle of the valley he goes, and the giant comes and laughs and said, far too small, as if they'd send someone like that. I'll kill you without even having to do much. But David trusts in God and tells him that I have come in the name of God. And he swings his sling and he throws the stone and the stone hits the giant and it knocks him out. David runs over and he grabs the giant's sword and he chops his head off. And so David becomes a hero and Saul is very pleased with him. So we're going to read from our Bible part of the story. This week it's found in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 38 to 51, and that can be found on page 322. So at this point, David has gone to Saul and said, I'll go and kill the giant. Saul's going to agree to it. And so this is the point of the story we start at. Saul said to David, go and may the Lord be with you. Saul put his own clothes on David. He put a bronze helmet on David's head and armour on his body. David put on Saul's sword and tried to walk around. But he was not used to all the armour Saul had put on him. He said to Saul, I can't go in this. I'm not used to it. Then David took it all off. He took his stick in his hand and he chose 5 smooth stones from a stream. He put them in his pouch and held his sling in his hand. Then he went to meet Goliath. At the same time, the Philistine was coming closer to David. The man who held his shield walked in front of him. Goliath looked at David. He saw that David was only a boy, tanned and handsome. He looked down at David with disgust. He said, Do you think I'm a dog that you come at me with a stick? he used his God's names to curse David. And then he said, "Come here, I'll feed your body to the birds of the air and the wild animals." But David said to him, "You come to me using a sword, a large spear, and a small spear, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies. He's the God of the armies of Israel. You have spoken out against him. Today the Lord will give you to me. I'll kill you and I'll cut off your head. Today I'll feed the bodies of the Philistine soldiers to the birds of the air and the wild animals. Then all the world will know there is a God in Israel. Everyone gathered here will know the Lord does not need swords or spears to save people. The battle belongs to him, and he will help us defeat all of you." As Goliath came near to attack him, David ran quickly to meet him. He took a stone from his pouch, he put it into his sling and slung it. The stone hit the Philistine on his forehead and sank into it. Goliath fell face down on the ground. So David defeated the Philistine with only a sling and a stone. He hit him and killed him. He did not even have a sword in his hand. David ran and stood beside the Philistine. He took Goliath's sword out of its holder and killed him. Then he cut off Goliath's head. Then the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, and they turned and ran away. So David can't understand why they're all afraid and why they're not relying on God, because he relies on God all the time. And so he goes out to face a giant, and he takes very little with him, and he hasn't really got a chance against a great big man with a sword and a shield. But God was with him, and so God helps him to defeat the giant. We can rely on God. It doesn't matter, we don't have to be big and strong, but God wants us to trust him and to rely on him. So there's 2 things for you to do this week. I explained one earlier. We want you to try and make a 3-metre giant in your garden with cushions and bags and all sorts of things, and take a photograph of you lying down next to it. The other thing is for you to do your own picture. We haven't provided one this week, so you can draw anything from the story that you'd like. See you next time. Bye.